Welcome to the Metaverse Brands Podcast, a podcast about how brands are integrating marketing strategies into the metaverse. Join me, Stephen Dypiangco, as I interview innovative pioneers behind some of the metaverse's biggest and best brand activations. Hello, and welcome to Metaverse Brands. I'm your host, Stephen Dypiangco. Today, I welcome Max Proctor from Doppelganger. Previously, Max worked at Wimbledon, where he took Wimbledon into the metaverse on the Roblox platform. We do a deep dive into that experience, how it worked, where it came from, and how successful it was, including reaching 11 million visits within 2 weeks. I'm excited for you to hear our conversation, but just a reminder, if you're enjoying our show, be sure to subscribe, be sure to comment, tell all your friends about it. Hope you're liking it a lot. Would love to hear from you. All right, well, let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Max.
So I started my career in advertising. So I used to work at creative agencies, kind of above the line agencies like BBDO and Wimbledon Kennedy in London. And then I spent a couple of years in San Francisco at a company called Goodby Silverstein, where we worked on Pepsi and Cheetos. And I'd kind of come to the end of my tether, is that the right phrase, with advertising. Knew I wanted to try something new. Actually, funnily enough, my last campaign in the ad world was a Cheetos Super Bowl commercial. And it was always an ambition of mine to do a Super Bowl commercial. So I thought this is a good time to bow out after that one. So yeah, so had an amazing run in advertising, then jumped from ad world into sports world with Wimbledon, where I joined their commercial department. And one of my jobs there was looking after the Web3 and Metaverse initiatives for Wimbledon, because we were always cognizant of the fact that our audience was aging, as with most sports brands. With each year, it was very difficult for any brand really, but sports brands as well, to engage with the younger audience as the media landscape kind of proliferated, and it wasn't so easy just to whack a TV campaign out there and hope everyone would watch it. So yeah, that led us to do a few initiatives, one of which was creating Wimble World on Roblox this year with the Gang, the Swedish company, a developer studio. I've worked with several brands, and it was super successful. So we can go on to talk about the results.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. No, sorry to interrupt. Before we get too much, and I want to spend a lot of time talking about that activation on Roblox, but just to your point about sports aging up, right? So I spent time working at Verizon, focused on sports programming, and it was so startling just looking at the data and the average age of so many sports, where it's like, baseball is like, I think, well into the 50s. Certainly NFL as well is really high, I think in the 40s. And then you have really just sort of like soccer as one of the like sort of younger, really younger leaning sports, at least in the United States. And so, yeah, like that across the board is a challenge. Is that, yeah, I think the trends, the behaviors, the way young people spend their time and what they're interested in is very different. And that, like, for me as a big sports fan, that's like kind of sad. It's like, oh, I want my kids to like the same things I do, but they don't. They like different things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they will still age into liking sports in a more traditional manner, but you've got to meet them where they are at this stage, because it's such, pre-teens and teenage years is where you form your interests and your hobbies that might last for the rest of your life. And so we've got to engage with them where they are in those stages of their life. And I think perhaps where we've gone wrong as a kind of marketing more broadly in recent years is thinking about, okay, so they don't watch long form content. So maybe if we just chop it up, make it into various formats that they can consume on Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or whatever, then they'll love us. And of course that goes some way to engage with them, but it's quite a shallow depth of engagement if you're taking the tennis um, subject as an example, we had a super successful TikTok channel, but at the same time, you're only watching a 10-second clip of someone doing something funny on court, and then you're swiping and you're on to the next thing. Whereas with these, gets me so excited about some of these metaverse experiences is that the people are immersed in these worlds for 10 minutes at a time on average, roughly. And so there's a real depth of experiencing a brand that you don't really get in short form video.
Yeah, that's super important, super powerful, different shift from, like, let's call it more, I don't want to say disposable, but short, right? Just like very
Yeah,
short, very passing. It doesn't really have that impact. So, all right, well, yeah, let's talk more about Wimble World, that experience on Roblox. Can you just share a little bit about, like, maybe the backstory? Like, how did that even concept, that idea, come to mind, and then what was it?
sure. Sorry, just taking a sip of my tea,
No worries.
as every good Englishman does. Uh, yeah, so how did it come about? So it came about because the two things, I guess we touched on it briefly, but kind of two broad things that we always have in the back of our mind at Wimbledon was, how do we appeal to a younger audience, and how do we appeal to a geographically broader audience? Because while it's a global brand and it's known pretty well world over, the core concentration of our audience came really from the UK and the US in terms of where we saw most of the commercial returns from. So how do we make our brand more relevant in a wider global sphere, and then how do we skew younger as well? And really, we tried many different things over the previous couple of years, and so, for example, to go back to that short form video conversation, we created a YouTube Kids cartoon series, and that was us, I guess, trying to transpose our preconceptions of how to reach the audience of, oh, if they're not going to watch the tennis, then let's create like a kind of cartoon narrative around the brand. And that went some way in getting the audience in, but it didn't deliver that kind of depth of engagement we were looking for. And we'd been aware of Roblox as a platform for some time. When we first started talking about it, it didn't seem like there were a ton of brands on there. NFL had dipped their toe, but they hadn't gone fully in. And it was only when we saw the Vans World execution that we thought, actually, this could be something really interesting that we could try ourselves. And so we got in touch with the gang, who kind of talked us through what it would all entail. And we went from there. And then in terms of what it looked like, so it's a recreation of Wimbledon, I guess, but in the weird and wonderful format of Roblox. So you could play tennis on center court. You could meet Andy Murray, who was an AI avatar. You could watch the highlights from the previous day's play. So each day we updated the video content on all of the big screens around the grounds. You could chat with your friends, obviously, as you do everywhere in Roblox. You could buy Wimbledon merchandise. So you could put a kind of strawberry backpack on, or you could buy the Ralph Lauren 2022 Wimbledon collection. So it was like really a multifaceted Wimbledon experience. And actually, so, obviously there's no substitute for being at the event itself. And I think we have 500,000 people passing through the gates each year. But for most people around the world, that's just not realistic. And so what we were trying to do was create the kind of next best thing, for the next best alternative, if you can't be at Wimbledon, to experience it in the deepest possible way. And hopefully we went some way towards doing that.
Yeah, I was checking it out and noticed, not only Andy Murray and the clothing shop, and was checking that out, and the gameplay, playing tennis as well. So it sounds like there's a lot of moving pieces to it, right? So lots of elements for not only for players to engage with, but to build. So can you just talk about, like, that concept, and it's like, hey, if you have a blank slate, a blank canvas, it's like, what do you paint? And so, yeah, how did that even come together? It's like, was it always like, oh yeah, we'll just recreate, the game, the real life in the metaverse? What was that sort of thought process?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's for sports brands, I guess it's more straightforward because you have a game at the heart of your brand.
Right.
So for us, like one of the core objectives for the business is how do we get kids to pick up a racket and try the sport in real life? And so we talked about doing other game modes, whether that be playing tennis against a wall or an obstacle course, which was themed like around kind of core Wimbledon icons like the strawberry and the balls and stuff like that. But actually, we thought if we could just replicate gameplay, that might incentivize people to go and actually pick up a racket themselves once they're not on Roblox. So that's where we landed. And obviously, like I said, it helps because we are a sport. You have a game at the heart of what we do. If we were a deodorant brand, I'm not sure how we would have come up with gameplay. Yeah, so it was slightly straightforward in that respect. And then the team at the gang were really great in kind of guiding us through what would work well in terms of their experience with the user base. So they didn't see a lot of kind of player versus player games on the platform. It's usually the games are kind of solo. And so they thought that could be pretty cool because then you could go in with your friend, and instead of kind of exploring the experience and going off and doing your own thing, you could actually play against each other, which was another thing we liked about it.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that concept of like, oh, we could have the players hit a tennis ball against the wall. I did that a lot as a kid, and I think I probably did that more than actually playing against other people, was just practicing hitting the ball against the wall. So
Yeah.
I totally can relate to that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm in the same boat. Although everyone always asks, "Oh, you worked at Wimbledon? Are you really good at tennis?" It's like, no, I'm pretty much rubbish at most sports. Thanks for asking.
And then just to understand a little bit about your background and how you came to this, like, what about your gaming experience in video games? Had you worked in video games? Are you a video game player?
I'm a video game player. It's funny. Whenever someone would ask, "Do you identify as a gamer?" In those surveys or whatever, I wouldn't identify myself as a gamer, and then I look at my behavior and I'm like, well, I play video games every week, so that probably makes me. But yeah, no, I played since I was a kid. I had N64, PlayStation, Super Nintendo, Game Boy. I've got an Xbox One now. I tend to play like FIFA, Mario Kart, a bit of Call of Duty, a bit of Fortnite, those kind of things. And actually, I used to play a game called RuneScape way back when I was like 13, 14, 15. And thinking back now, you could definitely call RuneScape a proto metaverse platform. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's kind of like a Dungeon and Dragons-y game where we would go after school. Everyone would have their character. You'd play within this realm, but you'd also be on MSN Messenger on the side.
Oh, wow.
If anyone's born in later than 1989, go look up MSN Messenger. But yeah, you'd be chatting. So in that respect, it's kind of similar to what you do on Roblox now. And you were buying stuff, you were trading with other people, you were chatting, you were socializing, you were playing. So RuneScape was for me like an early taste of what was to come.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder how much, yeah, for people who are in these spaces, who are building, that have some of that type of experience. So it isn't so foreign, this concept of wanting to spend time hanging out with your friends in these sort of virtual environments, video game environments, having fun that way. And I believe certainly with the pandemic, with quarantine, with all of that stuff, right? That type of behavior really accelerated, especially for young kids who couldn't go outside, who couldn't play with other people. And so we see lots of that type of behavior, which is just very different than years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And like I remember as a kid sitting on my friend's sofa and we would be playing GoldenEye or Super Smash Bros. And we'd have four of us crammed into this small sofa with a split screen, and it would be amazing. And what the pandemic did, as you said, when you were forced to stay apart, you're then playing the games. You're still with your friends online,
Right.
but you're all sitting separately with your headsets on. And that seems to be, the direction we're heading in.
Yeah. So just to go back to the Wimble World on Roblox. So what were some of the challenges that you faced in pulling off that execution?
What were some of the challenges? So Wimbledon is, as with a lot of brands, but I think especially with Wimbledon to some extent, is super protective of its brand image. It's not an overly commercial organization. It's a bit like the Masters in terms of golf, where it's a private members club. They're very concerned with anything that is off brand or that might not fit in with the kind of ethos of the club. And so explaining that this world isn't going to fully replicate what the tournament grounds look like, and centre court is going to look a bit kind of arcadey, and the shop isn't going to look as sleek as the one in real life. It's all a bit blocky and arcadey. That was a bit of an education piece. Mm-hmm. And I think when we understood that, well, the audience expects a different aesthetic. They don't look at this and say, oh, that looks bad or janky. They look at it and go, oh, this looks like a Roblox experience. So that was a challenge in that respect, kind of selling in the aesthetic, the look of in terms of the platform that sold itself in terms of just the numbers that they have on Roblox and the demographics. Like I said, it really chimed with what we were looking for. It was geographically, the audience is spread out all over the world. And in terms of an age range, it was really the bullseye. And when we got the data back on the results for how it performed, we had 11 million visitors during 2 weeks. And it was 80% of them were under 24. So it couldn't have been more, on objective in that respect.
Wow, I think it's actually interesting that 20% are over 24. Like that's to be somebody who thinks about the demo on Roblox, like that's super interesting that there's even, I think that's surprising that like there's just people over 24 playing on the platform. And but then understanding the brand, like, oh, that would be interesting, I would think, to a lot of folks who are in their 20s.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's why Roblox are encouraging brands, and especially entertainment brands, sports brands, to get involved, because for them, it's mutually beneficial in that, yes, we are going to put Wimbledon on Roblox because there's an audience there, but we're also going to bring our audience with us. Wimbledon is a massive organization. And while we didn't actually put any paid media behind it, just organically promoting it on our web channels, on social media, in tandem with Ralph Lauren, when they posted stuff, we brought a whole audience to their platform who might not have experienced Roblox before, which is probably where maybe some of those over 24s came from. So it's kind of like a win-win situation for everyone, I think.
What was the reaction from Wimbledon's social channels to Ralph Lauren's social channels in promoting this? Because I think, again, the aesthetic, right, isn't what maybe some fans of those brands might be expecting or used to. And so, I can imagine sometimes there's like, what is this? But what was that reaction?
Yeah, so really positive. So Ralph Lauren, I said Wimbledon are concerned about their image. Ralph Lauren, obviously, as a fashion brand, and the top of the top, really were concerned with how they were portrayed. And actually, as you'll know, there's a kind of innovation within the platform called layered clothing, where it's more photorealistic. And the Ralph Lauren collection was this more photorealistic aesthetic, which really, because they were one of the first brands to do it, within our experience, that went down really well. So that was awesome. And in terms of like the broader response, like I was amazed by how many creators there were on YouTube just making videos about the experience, like not paid for influencers at all, just people going, hey, this is the new Wimble World, going around it, giving people tips, telling people how to get the free items. And there was like a whole discourse and dialogue going on about the experience that we had no part of, that was just totally organic, happening yeah, on YouTube, on private Discord servers, whatever. And that was actually probably the most exciting thing, because obviously you have a good grasp on what you're creating when you're going through the process, and you have a lot of control of what you create. But once it's out in the wild, seeing how the community response panned out was, yeah, that was really fun.
So just to dig in there on a couple of things. So you mentioned certainly this organic YouTube influencers who talk about Roblox, and then you mentioned them sort of talking about these sort of free items. And so, yeah, could you talk about that? Because I think I've seen like that's a huge draw for a lot of players, Roblox players. They come to find those free items. They'll maybe watch a YouTube video to figure out how to get that free item. And so yeah, like what was the free item? How did it work? And what was the thinking behind offering a free item?
Yeah, so firstly, a stat that I didn't know until working on this at all, which really blew my mind, was if Roblox was a topic within its own right, it would be the fourth largest topic of content on YouTube.
Wow.
Like, it's saying that's how much like the community is engaged and talking about the platform, which is awesome. Yeah, in terms of the free items, another stat, I'm reeling off the stats, but I think actually Eric might have mentioned this on your first episode, is that once 1 in 5 people change the appearance of their avatars each day. So whether that be what they physically look like in terms of their avatars' bodies, or like items of clothing on them. And when you, as a brand, when you create a brand experience, one of the things Roblox has enabled in the past, I'm not sure if they're going to be that forthcoming in the future, is that you can offer out free items to your community. So that incentivizes people to come and play on your platform, because they want to get the free item to then show off how cool their avatar is, because they got a tennis ball for a hat instead of whatever the thing they got yesterday was. So yeah, it's just little tricks of the trade like that. The Roblox partnerships team that we worked with, Hayden, Daniel, over in the sports team, were amazing at kind of pushing those things through. And the platform's innovating and developing all the time. So those guys, if you're a brand or an agency looking to activate in the space, get in touch with the Roblox partnerships team, and they'll be super helpful in letting you know whatever the latest development is to help people find your experience.
Yeah, I've had the good fortune to be able to work with the partnerships team myself. Some of the brands that I'm working with, and they've just been amazing to work with. So helpful in just figuring out, yeah, all these, like you're saying, tricks of the trade. And I have always so many questions, and they're answering all of them and doing a great job over there. And then just another point in terms of like driving that traffic. You mentioned 11 million visits, 2 weeks. And it was a limited time event, right? So, or in the sense of like, it wasn't meant to be this like constantly updated, like ongoing thing. I think it's still live, but really the focus was like on a short-term event. I think when you are an event, you have the opportunity to get that placement within sort of the homepage, left-hand side, being featured there as a, event. So was that something that did happen? Is that something that you were, sort of planning on? And, was that part of the success, was getting that sort of featured placement on the platform?
Yeah, definitely. And we had like, coming back to the point around Roblox recognized that Wimbledon as a brand could bring them an audience as much as they could bring us an audience. So they were super great in terms of supporting the experience in terms of promoting it. So we had homepage exposure in that left-hand panel. I think they promoted it on their social channels and in the app stores as well. So yeah, they were great in that respect as well. I think what I gather from the Roblox developer conference this year, there might be changes to the way those things work. There might be more opportunities for discoverability through paid placements potentially. They're obviously bringing in their kind of immersive advertising platform where you can boost discoverability of your experience by having portals within other experiences as well. So even if you're not a kind of big event like Wimbledon, if you're a kind of a different kind of brand, you'll hopefully still be able to have ways and tools of people finding you.
Cool. In terms of like measuring the success of this campaign, this activation, yeah, how successful was it, and how was success measured?
It's funny, we didn't because it's such a new space and such a nascent platform. There's not many benchmarks, so we didn't really know what success looked like. We kind of had, if we reached 5 million, we would have been happy. But we didn't have any hard and fast, like we need X number of, because I guess ultimately this is a long-term play for Wimbledon. You want to get the younger audiences in now so that they become lifetime fans of the brand, so that then they watch the TV, which boosts the TV, the price of the TV deals when they're going to an ESPN or a BBC or whoever. And maybe they'll buy some merchandise, but it's very much like a long-term play for us. So we didn't have any kind of immediate KPIs that we were benchmarking against because there was no industry standard. But we were happy with the results of, I think, so the key results that stand out were the 11 million visitors. They spent an average of 8 minutes in the experience, which was above average. And they came from, crucially, in terms of the geographical point, the top market was the US, then it was Latin America, and Southeast Asia. So 2 markets there in number 2 and 3 who we don't typically hit that much. So that was that was a really good takeaway.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think both like LATAM and in Asia, it's like, oh, I don't think they have like major tennis tournaments, right? So it's like you're not fighting for necessarily for affinity against a homegrown sort of tennis brand there that like stands out globally.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So to wrap up sort of from this campaign, what did you learn? What were sort of the biggest takeaways from executing this?
What did I learn? From many things to do with the Roblox ecosystem. I guess we talked about a lot of them. From a client perspective, because I was a client at the time, I was brand side. I think the biggest thing was just to try and dip your toe and iterate. This space is only going to grow. You can see that from the amount of investment capital that's flowing in and the audience sizes that are growing and the platforms that are growing. This space isn't going away. The audience has grown up in a world where these platforms are the norm, and they're only going to get older and become kind of more affluent consumers. So this space isn't going away. So I guess the biggest lesson is dip your toe, see what happens, iterate. If something doesn't work, fail fast, keep trying. And the other big lesson is, as corny as it sounds, it's really fun. It's quite a fun world to play in. It's not your kind of standard dry marketing discussions that you have each day. It's gaming, it's social, it's commerce, all wrapped in one. And people are learning on the fly. So get in there, learn, and have some fun.
Very cool, very cool. Well, let's wrap things up with a bit of a speed round here. So, what is your favorite metaverse platform?
I have to say Roblox.
And then favorite either metaverse game or just game in general.
Game in general is FIFA, and I'm going to be very sad when FIFA, the license ends with EA Sports this year, because that's been the franchise since my early childhood.
And what team do you usually play on FIFA?
So I'm a Fulham fan, but you normally get trounced if you play as Fulham. So I'm going to say Man City and get abuse from my friends.
Yeah, I can see that happening. And then, yeah, if you could have anyone or anything as your avatar, what would it be?
If I could be anyone, well, I know this is an audio medium, so you can't see me, but I don't have a lot of hair. So an avatar which has a lot of luscious hair, maybe a lion. So yeah. So I can not be bald for a day.
There you go. Awesome. Well, so if people would be interested in, learning more about you and what you do and your agency, how can they follow? How can they get in touch?
Yeah, so it's Max Proctor just on LinkedIn, or Doppelganger on LinkedIn. The email's max@thegang.io, or we're launching our website next week, which is doppelgangeragency.com.
Very cool. All right. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much, Max.
Cheers, Stephen. Lots of fun.
All right. Thanks, Max. That was awesome. Really super fun conversation. To me, there were a couple key takeaways. Number one was really thinking about what are the objectives for your brand. And if your objectives are really to reach a young audience, to really create an immersive experience and one that is, has lasting engagement more than just a few seconds. And if you care about reaching a global audience, then certainly Roblox is a great option for you to explore. And number two, if you are a brand that is really trailblazing within your sector, within your industry, and that can mean that there's not a lot of benchmarks for what you're setting out to do. And so just to be aware of that when you're so early, we are very early in the space overall, that setting benchmarks is hard, and you really have to think about this as a long-term play and really about building that relationship, that awareness with your new consumers. If you're interested in getting in touch with me or following what I'm up to, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Stephen Dypiangco. You can also check out my company, which is Metaverse Marcom. We help entertainment and sports brands enter the metaverse. Our website is metaversemarcom.io. And on that website, you can also subscribe to our newsletter, which has some of our writings and updates on when new podcast episodes like this are released. If you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell other friends that this is your favorite podcast about metaverse brands. All right, thanks a lot. I'll see you in the metaverse.